The Russian government recently announced that Russia has successfully tested a countrywide alternative to the global internet. A stable operation of the Russian internet known as Runet is expected to create an alternate. What kind of signal does the internet test deliver? What does it mean for Russia to disconnect from a global internet? And how will it affect global strategic patterns? To discuss these issues and more, I'm happy to be joined in the studio by Cui Hongjian, Director of the Department for European Studies at China Institute of International Studies. While satellite, we'll also speak to Richard White, security expert at the Wikistrat Global Consultancy from Washington, D.C., and Pavel Fagunov. Without exceptions, we'll always be talking to him. He's a Russian defense analyst from Moscow. That's our topic. This is a dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Welcome to our discussion here. So, Hongjian, what do you think of the recent successful test of the nationwide Runet?
It has been, proposals or ideas from Russian side for a long time. I think, yes, maybe at the very beginning, especially from a Russian government perspective, it's just a kind of a test. Full of the technological sense. But indeed, I think for the outside, for the international community, we can find out more political and even strategic sense from it. I think firstly, it will give a scenario for the international community is there will be some kind of decoupling for the internet world. And also another, I think, concern from our side would be that this kind of alternative will be a kind of ballistic anti-missile system in internet. Just like maybe Mr. Putin argued that, okay, it's just a kind of a defensive behaviors or policy from Russia. But as we understand that always defensive and offensive, there are always two different sides for one coin, which means that once there will be a very successful disconnection from the global internet, there will be maybe easier, approach for Russia to have a kind of behavior on the cybersecurity or some other. So I think this is also a big concern from other countries.
Now, I have got a better understanding about the basic nature of an utter disconnection from the global internet by the Russian government. Let me go over to Pavel Fagunov. He's probably in a better position to address our concerns about the double-edged, not double-edged sword, but the two-sided dimension of Runet. Pavel, what do you make of the recent successful test?
Well, these were actually war maneuvers, so to say, cyber war maneuvers. It was a full-blown, the idea to run a full-blown cyber war simulation between Russia and the West. So they were testing the capabilities to defend against attacks not only against the internet in Russia, but against also the power grid system, the mobile phone system. And so some parts were actually performing the attacks, others were defending from it. So it's not just about kind of separating the internet permanently from inside Russia. This was a preparation, a first test of a full-blown cyber war, which, has its own properties, because in the West, in Washington, the Pentagon says it may be or maybe have been already running cyber attacks and accusing Russia of running cyber attacks. So this was the big one. It was officially announced that it was fully successful, though no details were very much provided at all. And some specialists say not everything was successful, which most likely will be normal, because this was the first major test of Russian readiness to fight a cyber warfare.
There's no question about that, Pavel, but technically I have a small question about, for example, the importance of root servers. All of them are in the hands of Americans, and this is, of course, a major concern for Russia and China. Without a single root server in the Russian hands, how could you have possibly established your own nationwide Runet?
Well, that's a big question, and that's what specialists are asking right now in Russia. How did that actually work, and what parts of it worked and what not? And the authorities are very tight-lipped. They don't provide any kind of information. Actually, they officially said that this test was happening on December 23, but actually, most likely, some parts of it are happening on December 16 and 17. So it's all covered in the traditional Russian veil of secrecy. Which systems worked better and which did not at all were not disclosed. The ways and means are also not disclosed. Apparently, they're seen as kind of military
This is indeed
stuff.
a secretive gift
And that,
for Americans.
So I can't answer your
gift.
question fully because I don't know.
This is indeed a secretive Christmas gift for Americans, one day ahead of the Christmas Eve. Thank you very much, Pavel. I will get back to you in a few minutes. But Richard, what do you think of the implications of establishing the totally Russian internet, which means an automatic disconnection from the global internet? Does that compromise the American ability to launch preemptively, for example, cyber warfare against Russia?
It may make it harder. I mean, one thing about the Russian internet was, like the U.S. internet, it was established, designed to be very open to international communication. So there are a lot of possible nodes, a lot of interfaces. It's not like the Chinese or Iranian systems, which were designed more with security in mind, which are easier to cut off. So I share your and Pavel's skepticism that this is a fully effective defense. That said, the U.S. has been contemplating means for not cutting Russia off from the internet, but using the internet to retaliate and target specific Russian actors that they think, for example, are interfering in the U.S. elections. And I imagine that these kind of exercises, if implemented in practice, would make it harder for the U.S. Cyber Command to do that.
Hong Jian, what do you think of the possibility and the prospect that the Chinese authorities would follow suit? Because we are also worried that our cyber security could be endangered.
I think so far, I don't think that the Chinese side will follow this kind of behaviors, imposed by Russian side, because I think if you take some comparison between Russia and China...
No, excuse me, I don't want to simplify the prospects that the Chinese would follow suit. What about the Chinese military and certain important departments and agencies of the Chinese government, which do need special protection?
I think now, firstly, regarding to the cybersecurity issue, now we do have a lot of exchange and discussion with other countries, including between China and Russia, and between China and the European countries, and also United States. But now, of course, obviously there are some very big differences between maybe different groups. It looks like on some big issues, China and Russia, they shared a lot of the consensus or common grounds. But at the same time, I think China will try to also develop more dialogue and communication with other countries besides Russia. So I think there's a very, very different situation for China. China, I think, so far is trying to block some, harmful message or information, and also China also try to find out the very, very useful, international law to regulate the cyber world. Of course, I think so far the most useful approach to reach it is dialogue and negotiation, not just disconnect from the global internet. Because as we understand, there is a very, very strong linkage economically between China and the outside world. So it's a different situation from Russia. So once there will be some maybe a similar disconnection of internet for China from global internet, I think there will be very, very big strike on Chinese economy.
The next issue is likely to be whether our government procurement program will have to compromise the import of American software, American hardware in the IT industry. to protect our own cyber sovereignty and cyber security. After approving the foreign investment law, which encourages basically level playing field, it means foreign multinationals are likely to have more market shares in the government procurement program. Do you think our security concerns will automatically compromise the ability by the Chinese side to import more of the sophisticated and sensitive software from the US?
I think now it's a very big issue for China how to keep the balance between the security concern and to keep the communication or to keep the connection with the outside world, especially as we know. We understand that now United States take a dominating role in this cyber world. But I think now, yes, China, it's very necessary for Chinese side to take some actions to protect its security from any kind of cyber attack from outside. But at the same time, I think China needs to take account that what's the benefit and what's the loss once we do something. So I think now it's too simple to say that, okay, China will block something more or China will introduce something more. I think it's a very, very big issue for China how to keep the balance.
Here is another issue for Pavel to further clarify the position of the Russian federal government. For example, at the annual news conference with the journalists, President Vladimir Putin insisted that the free internet and the sovereign internet did not contradict one another. Do you agree? And the implied message in his answer to the overseas media concern is whether freedom of the media could be endangered as a result of using your own Runet. Let me know your thoughts, Pavel.
Well, the idea of a separate Runet has been circulating in the Kremlin and government circles, but there's as it was already said here, there are serious problems. The Russian internet in the beginning from the 90s was built as a very open system with a lot of interconnections with the global networks. And actually separating it, really separating it on a permanent basis, it seems to be will require a lot of investment, and it's not easy to do. And even this exercise was not so much as to create an isolated internet, but this was a kind of situation, war situation, where the main idea was to defend against attack with different means. Building a kind of Chinese-style or Iranian-style separate internet with a firewall, well, that's, again, something that's being discussed, but right now we're rather far away from that technologically. A lot should be done to just get close to such an achievement.
Thank you very much, Pavel Fagerhall. When we come back, we'll take a look at why the construction of a pipeline that connects Russia with Germany has caused an uproar and a quarrel, a tough one, between the two allies across the Atlantic Ocean. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The Nord Stream 2, a pipeline running from Russia to Germany via the Baltic Sea, is under construction, but it's confronted with the sanctions from the US. American President Donald Trump signed a bill that included legislation imposing sanctions on firms laying pipe for Nord Stream 2. What's your take on this, Hong Jian? I mean, this is a very sexy front-page story currently that dominates the local media in Germany in particular.
Yes, I think now, as we know, it's make a very big sense for German side to get some more, energy supply from Russia, and also even it's not the first time for the American side to express its opposition against this project. But I think the timing is very, instructive, as we understand, because it's just for the more than 2,000 kilometers, I mean, for the pipeline. Now it's just less than 200 kilometers. It's reached to finish.
Are you saying that 90% has been completed?
Yes.
90% of the pipeline construction has been completed.
Yes. So it will give us a bigger attack on all of the stakeholders. Because as we know, there are 5 companies from European countries, including 2 of them from Germany. So what happened is they finished almost everything, but now there's just a few of it. And I think another background is it also maybe a Christmas gift from Mr. Trump to his counterpart in Ukraine. Because as we know, in November, Ukraine, European Union, they reached a new contract that there will be some more supply from Germany, from other European countries to Ukraine. And also days ago, under the mediation from European Union, Russia and Ukraine they tried to sign a new contract for the energy supply from Russia to Ukraine. So once it happened, yes, now it's the United States say, okay, I will do something. So I think it also gives some more, gift for Ukraine side to say, okay, I do something for you. Just we know that there are always some rumors about the relations between Mr. Trump and his counterpart in Ukraine. So I think now it gives a very, very difficult situation for European countries.
It's perhaps also one of the answers to the impeachment move that was preemptively launched by Democrats in the first place and many of the political rivals of Donald Trump to, in an effort to undermine the upcoming election 1 year from now. Let me go over to Pavel Falkenhorst. What do you think of the timing? Why did the U.S. impose sanctions now when 90% of the Nord Stream 2 project has been completed?
Apparently that just sort of happened because there was this is a kind of, it's a bipartisan effort actually in the United States. The initiative came from Congress and it was attached to the defense budget, and as it was going first through the House, through the Senate, and then it came to Donald Trump to sign. And in Moscow just 2 weeks ago, everyone was saying that it's too late, that the pipeline is practically completed, and American sanctions came in too late. It turned out that it's not so. The Swiss company that was laying the pipes immediately stopped work and moved its ships out of the Baltic Sea, and that was a really nasty surprise for Russia and most likely for Germany and the Europeans. And now no one really knows how to kind of get around that. There are different ideas kicked around in Moscow. Where could we get the ships? There's maybe one ship, Russian, but it's in the Far East. They're close, in the Japanese Sea of Japan. I mean, you have to move it here, or maybe try and find someone who's going to defy the sanctions, some Western company. So everyone's at a loss. The pipeline, there's 2 pipes going parallel to each other, one less than 100 kilometers left, the other a bit more than 100 kilometers left to complete. It's all because of Denmark, which was withholding to allow to put the pipes through its waters. And when Denmark actually allowed, and this Swiss company began to lay the pipes, then the Americans went in with sanctions, and everything right now is hung up. And that's creating a lot of tension inside Moscow and apparently in Berlin, too.
Thank you very much. Richard, why do you think Denmark was the last to have been persuaded and sign an agreement with Germany and Russia to allow the last mile to be completed in terms of constructing the pipeline that go through the territorial waters of Finland, Sweden, and Denmark?
Right. So the Europeans have been divided a bit on this pipeline. For a while, the French were leading the resistance, as well as some of the East Europeans. The Danes are very responsive to U.S. concerns about Russian activities in Europe or Chinese activities in the Arctic, so I suspect that they were responding partly to U.S. pressure, but they also had environmental concerns. But they, in the end, they did agree. So the only thing that's holding up the pipeline now are the U.S. sanctions. The Danish objection has been removed.
And what do you think of the immediate response from Germans? Of course, Germans are very, very angry, and they say our own economic matters should not be determined, should not be determined and decided on the American terms. They should take their own autonomy into their own hands. What do you think of the grievances, if not anger, from your German partner, Richard?
Sure, it's it was expected. I mean, the Germans have said that this will not make them overly dependent on Russian gas, that they're going to diversify their sources of energy, that Russia's always been a reliable partner for these kind of energy pipelines with Germany. And so I think this was accepted. The U.S. ambassador there has been fighting this pipeline for a while. Hopefully we'll overcome it. The German political leadership's in transition in the next year or so, so maybe this will fade in importance, or there'll be a new government will come into power, will be closer to the U.S. position. But for now, you're right. We're hearing a strong series of objections from the Germans and a lot of anger and threats to retaliate with climate sanctions or something like that.
We've heard enough about why the new generation of the European leadership wants to be more independent. Von der Leyen, for example, the newly elected chairwoman of the European Union Commission, vowed to establish more of its own independent awareness in building consensus regarding foreign affairs. Having said this, Richard, Washington, which has been seeking to sell more of its own liquefied natural gas to European states, has said Nord Stream 2 will make Europe too reliant on Russian supplies. To what degree do you think the construction of this pipeline between Russia and Germany will harm your business stakes in Europe?
Yeah, that's a tough question because the energy market is so unpredictable, and we're assuming that if there's no pipeline, then that would be replaced by U.S. LNG, but we just don't know. It depends on whether a new German government comes in and decides to relaunch a nuclear energy program. So it's possible it's a competing factor. I don't think, though, this is the main factor driving the congressional sanctions. I think it's just anger at Russia, efforts to impede Russian military sales, energy sales, and so on, and this was just included. But it may have been too late, though. I think that at best they're just going to delay the pipeline. I think it's too late to really stop it.
Thank you very much, Hong Jian. With the end of the Cold War, it seems the Russian authorities have never been trusted by Europeans, and neither have they been trusted by Americans, except for President Trump, for one reason or another. Hence, let's go back to what happened in the immediate aftermath of annexing Crimea by President Putin. So long as I'm concerned, the pipeline was cut off for a while by the Russian authorities in response to the sanctions imposed by both the European Union and the United States following Crimea. Do you think Russia is a credible, a reliable partner for Germany?
I think if we just take the Nord Stream 2 as a commercial project, I think there will be very, very reasonable actions from Germany side and also Russian side. Because as we understand, now the situation is German side, not only German, because as we know, the Nord Stream 2 will become a very, very important resources for not only Germany and also some other European countries. So
particularly during the winter.
Yes, indeed.
That's
yes,
so
indeed.
important.
Yes, and also as we know, the situation is because of the climate change, there will be a bigger requirement in future for European side to on the energy. So I think the question is very different language from a German side, from a Russian side. Say, okay, it's just a commercial project. The only or the single purpose is to deal with the issue of the energy and also economy and also the life of people. But for the United States, another language is security, political, and some other. So I think there is a very, very big precondition or maybe presumers for this criticisms from Washington against Berlin is that Russia destined will be the enemy of Europe. But I don't think that it will be accepted by German side, because Germany and Russia, as we know, has a very, very, deep linkage, culturally and historical and also some other.
Perhaps since the years of Bismarck.
Yes. So I don't think that for Germany say that, okay, we need to cut off any relations or linkage with Russia. It will not be in the interest of Germany.
Let's look at what's going to happen during the run-up of 60 days to identify companies and individuals providing services for the pipeline. Americans vow to impose sanctions on property and visa of those Germans who are involved in the project.
I think now, very difficult situation for German and the European side is not yet, has a kind of reciprocal retaliation for any kind of possible sanctions imposed by Washington. Because, as we know, even for Chancellor Merkel, she just say, okay, we need to deal with it, but with a very, very peaceful way. So as we know, because regarding to these sanction issues from the United States, now for Germany there is still another very, very big trouble with the United States. As we know, this trade tension between two countries. So now almost every card in the hand of President Trump. So once he wants to reach the goal, he will try to threaten the German side. Okay, if you will not give up this pipeline, maybe I will do something more on this, maybe more, tax on the car and some other. So I think that's a very, very difficult situation. Now I think maybe the solution will depend which kind of exchange, which kind of, price will be paid by German side. For example, some more maybe following the policy, especially not only regarding to Russia, maybe some other, will follow the Washington, maybe the price for
maybe
any kind
the issue of
compromise.
Huawei and perhaps the issue of more military spending for NATO.
Yeah, that will be a style of Mr. Trump.
After all, he's the author of Art of a Deal. With that, we come to the end of this edition of Dialogue on two subject matters. One is the alternative Runet, a replacement of the global internet for Russia to defend its own cybersecurity. In the second half, we discussed the construction of a pipeline between Russia and Germany and what it means for the transatlantic relationship between European countries and the United States 1 year ahead of the elections in North America. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.